everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, we talk to two people from Heroic Hearts, Jesse Gould, the founder and president, and Keith Abraham, the CEO of Heroic Hearts UK. And it's a cool conversation. The most exciting part, I think, for me was that it looks like Heroic Hearts UK is going to get some interesting government support. And I could be wrong, but I think that's a big deal. Heroic Hearts in the US, I think we get the group gets some attention, but I don't know if top senators like Pelosi or something, but things to think about. So yeah, thank you, Jesse, for coming on, and thank you, Keith. It was great to get to know you. And y'all might have heard Jesse Gould on the show before talking about Heroic Hearts. If you haven't heard that one yet, feel free to go back and check that one out. That's it for now, and we'll see you on the other side. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. Today we have Jesse Gould, founder of Heroic Hearts Project, and Keith of Heroic Hearts UK, a new organization that's coming online. So thank you both for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
So yeah, Jesse, you've been on the show before. People were really psyched about the episode, and I'm curious if you can give us just like a high level of the organization before we jump into the UK organization.
Yeah, of course. So hello, everybody. Again, I'm Jesse Gould. I was a former Army Ranger for a number of years, which included some combat deployments to Afghanistan. And like many veterans, I suffered from some mental traumas when I got home and just had this dark cloud around me. And it was ayahuasca that really, saved my life, changed the course of how I was living my life, the healthiness of my life. And so after that, just because of the profound experience I had, it became a mission to offer this and open it up to more veterans that are in a similar spot as I was. So that was the dawn of Heroic Hearts Project, where we connect military veterans to psychedelic treatment options, and with a major focus on ayahuasca, but we've worked with other psychedelics as well. And so, veterans in need come to us. We provide them information. We provide them support. We connect them to retreat centers that we have vetted ourselves. And, often we provide financial scholarships to those veterans in need. And so, we're really just trying to, in the modern lack of infrastructure around a lot of these powerful options, we're just trying to provide sort of a pipeline for those wanting to pursue it, to set them up for success and ensure the maximum amount of safety.
Yeah, that's outstanding. Thank you. And so obviously there's only so much you can do with a small team. So you decided to grow. And now Keith is operating in the UK. Can you tell me about how that worked out? How were you friends with Keith from before?
Yeah. So, we've been active for about 3 years, which in some schemes is not a lot of time, but we've actually made a lot of progress. And, the whole psychedelic world is exploding in general. And so we've been on that wave as well. And so year over year, everything just increased attention, increased need, all that. And, we've made a lot of strides. We're connected with universities. We're connected with a lot of great people. And so through that, we have really developed this really solid program through working with veterans. And especially over the last year, we started working with international veterans from Australia, Canada, UK. And it just really became apparent that there's a need around the world for veterans for this therapy. And what we found is places like Canada and UK, the veteran population, which Keith will probably go into, don't get necessarily as much attention or spotlight as the US veterans. And so, it's sort of an expansion of how can we change this dynamic. And Keith and I sort of crossed paths because we have worked with the same center. A guy named Chris Odell runs a place called La Medicina in Peru. And it's a fantastic center, one of the better places I've worked with. And Keith got a lot of his own healing there. Chris connected us, and we just saw eye to eye on a lot of things. And just like I said, there's a need over there, but there's also a unique way of addressing it. Keith is from the UK, I'm not, and so I feel like I'd be at a disadvantage of appealing to the locals there and appealing to the local veterans especially. And so we started just tossing back and forth this idea. And as many things in this world happen, it just kind of blossomed on its own.
That's great. And Keith, for you, can you talk about yourself a little bit, introduce yourself, and maybe why you were interested in getting involved?
Sure, of course. It really echoes a lot of what Jesse was saying. Our experiences really aren't too dissimilar at all. I was a British paratrooper for nearly 9 years, and I deployed to Iraq and had a combat operation in Afghanistan. And after a little while, I became aware that I wasn't functioning quite right, and I was exhibiting symptoms of like anxiety and depression. And I did what I thought, most veterans do, is they seek out help, and that help normally is one of two options, really, or you can combine the two options, which is, well, you can do psychotherapy, go and talk to someone, or you can take these antidepressants. And so I tried those things, and they definitely didn't work for me. And before long, it became apparent that I was ready to leave the military. I started working at JP Morgan, an investment bank in London, and then these symptoms just started coming on stronger and stronger, and there was nowhere else. I had nothing, no other option. There was nothing available to me, really. I got involved in the Chinese internal arts, which still help me to this day on a daily practical level. But really, before long, I found myself in Peru, like Jesse was just saying, and ayahuasca changed everything. And I came out of that jungle a very different person. I wouldn't say that I had a full 100% healing experience, but I had that massive catalyst where I knew that my life had to change. And it has. And then from there, in the years since, where I've got myself together, I started realizing, I'm in a good place. How can I introduce UK veterans to the experience that I've had, because I see that as vitally important. And then I was introduced to Jesse, and it turned out that the organization that I thought I wanted to create had already been created perfectly. All of my intentions perfectly aligned with all of Jesse's existing aims and ambitions. So we just spoke and decided that it's probably best just that I'd take on a UK branch, and here I am. So it's not a registered charity yet, but I am in the process of it, and we're moving quickly down the line so that we can start facilitating these experiences, opportunities for UK vets in Latin America, but also we've got the Netherlands nearby, which is attractive to UK vets, not having to cross the Atlantic and disappear into the jungle.
Right. Right. It's got its own set of challenges when you have to go kind of deep into the Amazon.
Yeah.
Especially across the Atlantic. Yeah, that's a great point too.
It's and from conversations with Keith, just different perspectives and probably different points of the timeline in terms of where psychedelics is integrated into society. I think ayahuasca still might be a little bit too intense or on the extreme border for a lot of the perceptions there. And so what he's seen so far, obviously it'll evolve, but maybe psilocybin or whatever local retreats might be a little bit more accommodating as it evolves there as well.
Yeah, totally agree. It's really is where we're at in the UK is we are a few steps behind. There's no doubt in the awareness of the power of psychedelics. There's no doubt about that. But we actually had a retreat set up for last month, but it obviously got shut down because of COVID. So there are UK vets that are excited by the opportunity that ayahuasca might be able to present, but there is definitely more visibility, for want of a better word, for things like psilocybin than maybe even MDMA, which is not my focus for Heroic Arts UK, but it is there and is being shown to be doing incredible things.
Right. Yeah. Based on the data, it seems to be doing really well with treatment-resistant PTSD. But we, a long way to go with data, right? Science is young still. And that's really great. You're exploring all sorts of options too. I like that a lot. Now, when was Heroic Arts UK kind of started up?
Well, that's a very new thing, within the last 2 months is when I started gathering our team together. I've got a fantastic team around me. with some really powerful trustees and an advisory board full of just awesome characters and professionals. But it's still a new thing. Like I say, we're not a registered charity yet. I've started that application process, but it's quite a long process here with the Charities Commission. And so for now, it's really just creating visibility and awareness for UK vets that this is an option and that there are places safe and responsibly and legally, importantly, but professionally as well, and respectfully, the retreat centres that we're using, that we've vetted. We're not just offering these opportunities out everywhere. We've got very respectful and professional retreat centres available to all of our veterans. And plus, I'm not just opening it up to military veterans as well. Because of the population size here, I've opened it up to emergency services personnel as well, veterans, I should say.
That's really cool.
But yeah, like even though it's been only a couple months, the reaction so far has been extremely encouraging, just in terms of, like you said, the people that are willing to help out and be on the team, and just sort of the possibilities in terms of just local publicity and all that sort of stuff has been very encouraging. Later, I think next month, we're all going to be on a podcast with Professor Nutt over there. And, and obviously he's one of the major names in it. So he's very excited about this and the veteran side, and, Keith can go into more of the team, but it's just been very encouraging. Even if the perception there hasn't really caught on like in the US, I think this will be a good doorway for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see on the Heroic Hearts Project UK site, there's a member of Parliament, Crispin Blunt, great last name, who's into this and supporting the project by name, which is really, really nice to have political support at that level. How did you make contact with politicians?
Yeah, so Crispin is the co-chair of the All Party Parliamentory Group for Drug Policy Reform. So it's kind of like there's your Democrats and Republicans would come together and discuss potential reforms. We have a very similar setup, obviously. So he's a co-chair of that parliamentary group that are lobbying for drug policy reform change. But he also set up a group called the Conservative Drug Policy Reform Group. And some of their staff actually reached out to me, and we've been discussing working together and how we can collaborate. And we're already talking about a retreat in the Netherlands that may well be documented, so a film. And we're taking some scientists out there as well to gather some scientific data. So it's great to have such a powerful political ally. I mean, I really didn't foresee that, but he's really fantastic. You can see his career is behind this, and giving his name to it is an incredible. He's an incredible ally. Yeah,
it's enormous. I didn't even realize at first. Like, I just thought member of parliament. I didn't realize even like higher up than a normal MP. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really cool that you're going to be able to do some filming and research as well. It's always a tough balance. Like I've looked at this kind of thing as well, of like how much data to collect and how much film to get in certain situations, if any. Because sometimes it's okay, and sometimes people are a little too damaged, perhaps, to handle that. So I'm glad you're digging into that and getting some scientific folks out as well, because we just don't have that much data.
We don't want to be too intrusive. Obviously, it's the people that are going to be coming on and going to know full well that that's what we are going to be doing. And if they're not comfortable with it, of course, there are plenty of other opportunities.
We've always had to do that that balance beam as well in the past, because, you want to capture, it's valuable information, it's valuable data, but you also don't want the person to feel like they're a lab rat, and so a lot of it has to do with the preparation and the conversation before, making sure they're willing. Because, as I mentioned, we do like a survey through the University of Georgia, which is like testing personality changes. And we've added on, I might have mentioned this the last podcast, a gut microbiome study through the University of Colorado Boulder. And we're in the process of adding other biologicals in there. And so it's awesome data, and we're like on the cusp of finding some really interesting things. But also you have to be careful because one, there's sort of the death by survey of like how many papers can you get somebody to fill out and sign before they just like call it quits. But also you just don't want to like poke and prod, because the whole point of this is, you know, they're trying to heal from trauma. And so if they go into it with the bad perception, then you're affecting the results. But so far we've been pretty fortunate. You know, a lot of the guys, I think it's kind of the military sort of mentality too, because you're used to it. When you go through basic training, you know, one of the days is just like you get 20 shots during the day, and that's pretty regular for the rest of your military career. So I think a lot of them are all about it, especially once they have the positive results of, hey, yeah, let's push this forward. You know, I'll sacrifice myself, take whatever biologicals you need, and let's push this forward.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's really excellent. Have you seen any preliminary data from the gut microbiome thing? I forget how long ago we talked about that.
Yeah, we've been kind of on hold. So in March, we were going to do this like across the board major survey, and all the veterans were all about it. So it would have been a small sample size, about 9 vets. But we are geared up to do, you know, the microbiome, so fecal samples, dry blood samples, saliva, urine, these portable like EEG helmets. But obviously that got paused. Hopefully, you know, late this year, early next year, we'll restart that. So that would be very interesting. With the microbiome, we've been a little bit on hold because it is such a sensitive analysis. You want to get as big of a group as possible, because every time you analyze the samples, it incorporates some sort of error. And so if it's the same sample, you can factor out the error. But if you do a lot of different samples, then it becomes harder to compare like for like results. And so we have about 20 plus samples ready to go. But I think we're waiting a little bit to get a slightly bigger sample size so we can have a little bit more robust data. But, you know, hopefully once, you know, it's right there on the cusp. And I do believe, especially anybody that's tried ayahuasca, that there's something to it. You know, I'm very interested to see what sort of effects it has on the stomach.
Right. Like realistically, I would love to see like 20 years of research on this topic, because it's so complex. Like all these dietas going in, and you know, the different types of ayahuasca brew. It's just really fascinating. And so much data we could get. Like, it's kind of shocking how young gut biome research really is too. I'm glad we're getting around to it though, and it's becoming a lot more conventionally accepted.
Yeah, so we're working, the professor that's in charge of the lab is named Chris Lowry, and he's one of the foremost experts on gut microbiome. And just having a conversation with him is fascinating, of just things you never know. And just, you know, even what's living on a vegetable, you know, pre-wash. And if, you know, obviously you have to be safe about it, but just if you mix different plants and different colored plants, even you'll get all sorts of different microorganisms in your gut, and just how it interacts with that. And it's very fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. You're able to score a scientist like that.
Yeah.
Really important. So maybe it would be helpful to maybe talk about a success story from your organization or two. Like, do you have any kind of cases you like to talk about?
Yeah, of course. You know, I mean, that's kind of what really inspires me. I'm sure you have the same sort of thing with your organization. You know, it's a love-hate battle with what we're doing. It's been an up the hill sort of battle the whole time. But it's those small moments where you really see the effect, and then the positive stories that just bring you back and regain your confidence in what you're doing. And so, you know, one of the ones where I was just kind of like, all right, just going through the motions, but I went to a retreat with some pretty notable veterans, and 3 of them before had noted to me that they had a past of suicidal ideation, you know, to various degrees, where, you know, that it was at least on their mind. Whether or not they would have gone through with it, it's a different question. But we went to this place, the same one, La Medicina in Peru. And just after the first ceremony was intense. Everybody went very deep. But just after that one, they independently came up to me and just talked to me and said, the idea of suicide just seems so ridiculous now. I don't even know how I could get into that mind frame anymore. And to this day, that's held true. So powerful things like that, because that's actually literally life-changing effect of it. One of the more powerful stories recently was a guy named Rudy, who, Army Green Beret, sniper, multiple deployments, taught younger snipers. So just credentials in terms of the military, crazy. And he showed up. We went to a place in Costa Rica, and he's just, the stereotypical big Army, like Green Beret, like on a poster. And he was just, didn't speak a word. You could tell he was kind of pissed off to be there, but there's something in the back of his brain that brought him there. So fortunately, and, it was, the transformation was wild. And so after the first or second ceremony, it was like a different person. He started wearing even wore different shirts. He had a Hawaiian shirt that he started wearing after that. And we're actually making fun of him because we're like, oh, Rudy's a complete hippie now. And that's not to say like anything bad, but he's still the same Rudy, but the tension that lifted off of him was palpable to everybody around him. And a few months follow up, there was just sort of this amazing story, kept up with him obviously. And he's just really taken to the integration work and everything. And he was just saying a story of, that morning, he had woken up early. He had made pancakes with his 10-year-old son. And he was just saying, it was this beautiful time. And in the past, he would be, super hyper vigilant and alert. And, if his kid had to make the bus, and he would just, he would be on that timeline and wouldn't allow for his kid to be late. He said for the first time, he was like, hey, I'm enjoying making pancakes with my 10-year-old son. I can drive him to the next bus stop, or we can figure it out. And he just said it was a complete different change. And just how, and he saw it from his kid's perspective too, because his kid had only known Army Rudy, right? He had only known this military person. And so the kid was almost skeptical at first, because Rudy said this was the first time he returned to his pre-Army side of like a little bit carefree, a little bit silly. And so it was almost this rebonding with his child. And so those sort of things are just extremely powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wow.
That did that in my experience as well, because my son's actually in the same unit as I was in the parachute regiment. And when I left the parachute regiment and went for my ayahuasca experience in Peru, I then came back, and my son was looking at me like, wait, you're a grisly old war veteran, and now you're talking about like everything is connected and love and peace and harmony. Like, this is strange, but he's got really used to it now. But yeah, it's wonderful that these plant medicines can do these things for us without such strong minds and characters and this ingrained training as well. That it can be overwhelmed in a good way. It's wonderful.
So that brings up a really interesting point, and it's a problem I'm sure you guys have thought about a bunch. Is this younger generation of actively enlisted folks? Like, how do you somehow prepare them for knowing that they might have to do some decompression once they're out? Like, is that a topic you think about once in a while, or how do you approach that?
If I may, I do give it some thought because of my own son. He's just got back himself from his first tour, and it caused me to look back at what my parents must have been experiencing while I was in Afghan. Like we had totally different tours, because mine was a combat tour. But still, when the parents are behind it, thinking, oh, I hope my child is all right. So for the first time, then it was my attention turned to, well, how am I going to, do I have to play a role in my own son's decompression, or what am I going to do? Is it my role as a parent, or do I need to leave some of that responsibility to friends and maybe the regiment themselves? But he's a balanced kid, and so we're doing okay. Whatever we're doing okay at the moment. But it's a big question to ask. A big question.
Yeah, and I think it's really, you can't, especially some strong-headed vets, you can't force them into anything, but providing the support and the tools and the understanding is the biggest part of the battle. So when they do fall or when they do struggle, there is something there. Keith and I didn't have that, and a lot of the people we serve don't have that. There wasn't the support. It's like, if you don't go into this pipeline, which, and it's fine for some, and, I'm not knocking medications across the board, but it has a very limited effect for many. And if that's not working for you, then there's not that many other options. And so just having the information out there, just having, fellow service members having these stories and the safety to do it is huge. But especially, and I think it's our changing perspective on mental health and how people approach things and how we approach therapy, especially for the veteran community. If you look at what we go through, you go through this indoctrination program, you go through a basic training, which is all about getting you into a military mindset. How do you work as a unit as opposed to an individual? How do you work in these high stress situations? Even more so when you go through selection processes for special operations. But then on the tail end, there's no ceremonial, there's no indoctrination to return you to civilian life. And so you see that with a lot of veterans. It's 1 foot in, 1 foot out. They're trying their best to be civilians, but there wasn't that same ceremonial transition. And you see that cross-cultural. Like we've lost that sense a lot in the Western world. But if you look at a lot of these indigenous tribes and a lot of historical precedent, there's always ceremonies signaling the transition from different phases of life, becoming a woman, becoming a man, taking, certain duties of leadership within a tribe. And I think we've kind of brushed those off as oh, that's not important. But what we're realizing is that interplays very importantly with mentality. And that's one of the beauty of psychedelics, especially ones like ayahuasca, is it has millennia of these ceremonies that evolve through time. And it speaks to the core of a lot of people. It speaks to that warrior archetype in a weird way that you can't explain, but you can just feel.
It's this classic story that Joseph Campbell will talk about, a soldier or warrior returning back to his village. And it took this like really classic story of like, not necessarily having landed yet appropriately and kind of lashing out and not being the person he was before, et cetera. And it was really interesting that this story kind of showed that the whole village kind of wanted to be involved. So I think that story really highlights just the need for community when you get back, more so than anything else. But yeah, that's really cool that you're working on that. Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to, what Jesse was saying there with these ceremonies, that some of the indigenous tribes in the past that I was reading about, they actually have specific post-war ceremonies. So it's not even about you're no longer actually a competent or warrior. You can still perform that role for that community. I'm not saying that this is advisable for Western militaries, obviously, but the indigenous tribes, they have a post-war ceremony to say, welcome home, and let's just try and decompress you. And you need to still function within our community. You can't you can't behave in the same way that you were used to behaving. And that just does not exist. When I came back from Afghanistan, I had 24 hours of a decompression in Cyprus where it was just, okay, let your hair down. Okay, get back on the plane, we're going home now. 24 hours of just binge drinking and aggression and violence. And it's just bizarre and unhelpful. It just didn't serve a purpose. And it just doesn't exist, these ceremonies.
And I do believe, one of the things we teach through Heroic Hearts, especially in the integration process, is it's fine to maintain your warrior, that warrior spirit, that warrior soul, but now you need to learn to use that energy and use that strength towards other means. You're done with, you might be done with the fighting for now, but that doesn't mean you're set out to pasture and done with society. There's a lot of different ways you can use that energy. I do truly believe that there is a warrior soul in a lot of people. I mean, that's what drives them to do these, serve others as opposed to themselves, to risk their lives. And I do think that's inherent to a lot of people. And so when they no longer have the capacity to exercise that when they leave the military, you see a lot of them like die internally. They're not the same person that they were. And so it's, the psychedelic process can re-stimulate that, but then you also still have to guide them and use that energy in the appropriate way. And that's where, again, a lot of veterans, you just see that naturally. The amount of nonprofits that come from from former veterans is amazing, and it's a good indication of that sort of need. And so on the tail end, that's a strong part of the reintegration, focusing them of, okay, use that energy. How can you help others? How can you support other veterans? How can you continue to be a warrior just on a different trajectory?
Mm-hmm.
Same across the board in the UK. The biggest problem is a lack of meaning, a lack of purpose when they leave those gates. And you don't have, like Jesse was saying, you're not put out to pasture, especially if you're just coming out at 30 or something like that. Just
right.
There is something else out there for you, maybe numerous things out there for you, just maybe a little helping hand, a little bit of mentoring or coaching.
I know I was banging my head against the wall. I went from high-speed Ranger deployments to corporate America. And at first it was intriguing, but after a while of just the repetition and like, oh, this is how all the months are going to be for the next 10 years.
Yeah. The corporate world is so deflating at times. You wrap up university, you get out of the military or whatever, and you're just like, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to have a great life. And you're just like, what the hell is happening? I have to really go to these meetings and do these horrible things, and at times be a real dickhead. It's just really, kind of crazy. I've, been through it a whole bunch. I'm really happy to be out of corporate America.
It's like the water cooler chat, that they always make fun of, and it's 100% true. It's like another case of the Mondays. Can't believe it's Friday, and you're just like, oh Lord.
Yeah, really. Is this what you guys want to talk about? Come on. I just got out of, 4 years of the most interesting shit ever, and this is what you're going to do? Good grief. And, the military is obviously quite different than, college, but some sort of analogy, something kind of ideal to, or, wild at least, to something that's just so boring. And it's like, how do you bridge that gap? Like, I'm sure you've run into that now too. Like, it's great that people can have an ayahuasca experience or a couple, but like, how do you, is it easy to maintain for folks when they're not necessarily, I don't know the best way to put it.
It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying. It takes definitely courage, and also, one of the things we vet for within the people that go is, are they willing to put in the work? Because, ayahuasca or other psychedelics is just a tool. And if you're not willing to do the preparation, and if you're not willing to do the integration work, which means make tough decisions, make changes in your life, take some risks, but with good risks, positive risks. But if they're not willing to do that, then, the changes might not take. For some people, it really depends on the person. It depends on how deep their trauma is. But some people, they go back and, they go back into a relationship that they can't salvage, or they go back into still having a lot of debt or whatever. And those are just very hard things to overcome. And so that's why we're just one piece of the puzzle. It's a powerful piece, and we can help, but it needs a community to support that. And hopefully through this, and possibly through the psychedelic world, we can build that of, okay, well, he's home. Who's in our community that can help him out in this way? I think it's also reassessing. I think there's been this huge focus on, you do your college, you go straight to corporate world, and we're in this middle of this transition where, people are rediscovering like, oh, hey, it's not bad to be a welder or a tradesman or some other alternative job that may not have the glamour as some places. And so I think we are in that process of reassessing what it means to work and enjoy your life.
Yeah. Courage is right. It's, even though it seems like a endless task of going to the office and, nothing's going to get better. It's just day after day of drudgery. There is courage there because there's so much more you can do if you have the courage to kind of tough that stuff out or find something even interesting that you're passionate about. that would be the real hope, right? To have people really come alive and find what they're, kind of here for, in a way.
It's like the medicine is just the catalyst. It's a potential catalyst for change, but it could be terrifying if you've got the bills to pay and you've got your kids, and that corporate job is sustaining all of that. But you've had this profoundly life-changing experience, and just in the moment, it's the catalyst. But you take that plane home, and you're back in your 3-bed house with the kids and the bills. So that takes great courage to be able to leave that job and branch out, or do something that fulfills you or that gives you meaning again. Especially, we're talking about veterans where we're used to finding that purpose and meaning. The corporate world can be murderous on your soul. There's no meaning or purpose there, at least not in my experience. So again, great courage to step out of it and almost risk everything. That's what it feels like. That's what it felt like to me, risking everything. But I had support, and we are the support for our people. That's what we aim to be. So just developing these communities.
And I think for a lot of people, it doesn't even need to have, both Keith and I think also because of lack of the support, we had to take probably bigger risk and bigger life changes. But I think for a lot of people, it's really small steps can be fantastic and can really be life altering. You can stay in your job, even if it's not the best thing, if it pays the bills. A lot of people don't have that option, and you can do that, but then you can build your life on doing small things, learning to cook after work, on the weekend, volunteering. It doesn't need to have this huge life. I'm going to quit my job and rediscover it. That can be dangerous, but you can improve your life in very small ways that have huge ripples down the line.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And people, it's hard to really see that, right? Like, what does your life look like a year after, doing yoga and meditating every day? Substantially different's the answer, but it's so hard to see that. So yeah, like having positive examples, which is great inside your kind of community, to say like, hey, Jimmy did this for, 2 years and look at him, so I love that you have this vision towards community that a lot of folks might be missing.
And the support within the community, and the support of, like you said, the examples, because I know I'm the same way. And especially a lot of veterans, one of the hard parts about yoga and meditation is they don't want to look like an idiot, or they don't know the appropriate steps. Like, nobody wants to go and be the guy like falling over in yoga, and that's enough to keep people out. And so if they have the guidance and the support, as opposed to like trying to find some place themselves and whatever, it sets people up for success much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So it's really hard to project what we're going to be going through with this whole virus thing. Like, but say everything's wrapped up by the fall. Like, how do you see things proceeding for your organization?
It's hard to say. I mean, everything's just so up in the air. I mean, fortunately, we're like we mentioned before the podcast, just building up the behind the scenes, the infrastructure. Working with this has been a great opportunity for Keith to get things going there. Just because when you start organizing retreats, that takes up so much energy and time and logistics. And so hopefully we're just building our foundation, the foundation of our foundation for when things, catch back on. I think it'll be slow. I think people will be hesitant, but I think there will be a flood to a lot of these retreats. People have had to deal with a lot of stuff in their own head being stuck at home. And so that will have to come out. I don't know. We'll be flexible. It's nature is sending a message right now. And so it's on us to be patient and listen to what it's saying.
Yeah, it's a great time for just administration and preparation. And then we're just ready for when we're able to take steps, to take that action.
And are you hearing any stories about how hard this kind of lockdown is for folks?
Yeah.
Well, you're living it. We're all living it, but the folks you're trying to serve, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I think across the board, isn't it? It doesn't matter what I'm in the UK and you guys are in the US or wherever we are. I think people are struggling in the same way. And vets, vets are no different. So it's really about visibility is where me being the UK branch now, it's about just saying, listen, this is available and it's viable and it's safe and it's effective. And if you've tried everything else, there's an opportunity here for you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, at the moment, it's a great time for administration and preparation. But sure, when things eventually kick off again, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of people saying, I'm ready for this. But there are already people reaching out when, the messages are just like, when you're ready, please, I'm ready. So
right.
It's just great to be able to be of service again, and provide these opportunities.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of vets that I've encountered too, it's actually, they're somewhat used to it, because a lot of them that like deploy, when you, as deployment's much different from what you see in the movies. A lot of it is just downtime. You do your missions or patrols or whatever, but then a lot of it, you're just stuck in the middle of nowhere with, watching the same movies over and over again, or playing video games without seeing the same people all the time, not really you can't go out or go to the bar. So a lot of vets are used to doing that for months at a time. Obviously the ones that are suffering, that have a lot of mental issues, it's probably, the delay is unfortunate, but we all have to adjust to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing how like collectively difficult this is, but as veterans, you've been through some stuff. So like a lot of civilians haven't really been through that much. So it's, you've perhaps been prepped. So I like that. Yeah, it's not like we're, there's gunmen running around, New York all the time. Like that's a different scene. Thankfully, we're not there. Yeah, cool. So
perspective helps. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of veterans were just disappointed it wasn't a zombie apocalypse. 90% of the downtime is planning for the eventual zombie apocalypse, and so they're probably just like, "Oh man, so close."
Well, so how can people get involved or learn more? You've got some great websites. Maybe you want to point people to those and talk about opportunities.
Yeah, of course. HeroicHeartsProject.org is the one in the US, and Keith.
It's heroicheartsuk.com is for us.
And so we're on all social media, and Keith's is too. So it's pretty easy. Just look for either Heroic Hearts Project or Heroic Hearts Project UK. The bigger one is our Instagram, but we're on Twitter, and we have a Facebook group. It's reach out. There's the contact forms on the websites. Where we're in the US, we're starting an ambassador program, but we'll also accept applications for the UK as well. And the nature of the ambassador program is really trying to find ways to empower people, whether they have some skill set to bring or they just want to donate time to empower them to do that. It's still in its early pilot stages, but we're talking with people, figuring out ways, especially once we can all gather and form events again. How can we get these local hubs, establish these communities that we were talking about in this podcast? So, if somebody reaches out from Colorado, how can we have them reach out to veterans and get these small little microcosms of support where they can have local businesses support vets in that area? So that's what we're trying to develop with our ambassador program. So people can reach out there. And, at the end of the day, both sides are nonprofits. So our ability to help people, I know there's a lot of people in need, but, the veterans and in the UK, especially the first responders are, they still need this help. And so donations are, always appreciated. And that's how we run and operate.
Well, so mostly a donation run organization.
Yeah, completely. We're in the US, we're 501c3. So all donations are tax deductible. And that's Keith is making that for the UK one too. But, none of us get paid. All the money that comes in goes directly to the vets. And that's what allows us to connect them to these therapies. And just on a broader scheme, from a macro standpoint, I do believe that through these veteran testimonials and the stories is one of the best entryways to expanding these options to the rest of the society. So it's not just like, oh, what do I care about these people? I think it really will have impacts for everybody that's seeking these options.
Yeah, that's extraordinary. And people should definitely dig in more on this topic. It's such a big topic. And I'm glad you two are out there doing this work, helping folks. There's a lot of people left to serve.
Yeah.
Like the numbers are dire, and like dire enough that people should be kicked in the ass to get to work on this stuff a little bit. Like, hey, this is quite unconscionable, so let's get to it. And yeah, thank you too for doing that. Cool. I think that's it for right now. So yeah, I definitely want to hear more from you guys when you have more to share.
Yeah,
so let's do another one.
For sure. And thank you so much for giving us a platform. Always good catching up with you.
There you have it, everybody. Keith Abraham and Jesse Gould from Heroic Hearts and Heroic Hearts UK. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to get in touch with them, you can check them out at heroicheartsuk.com or heroicheartsproject.org. If you know somebody that needs help, that's a veteran, these guys are a great place to start. I don't know anybody with more experience in helping people get access to plant medicine, ayahuasca, psychedelics generally. These guys are really doing great work helping veterans get access to ayahuasca. So there you have it. Heroic Hearts Project. Thank you both for joining us. If you want to support the show, you can leave us a small donation monthly at patreon.com/psychedelics today. You could scoop up some of our books that you can find on our shop, psychedelicstodayshop.com. We've also got courses online, psychedelicEducationCenter.com. Plenty of great stuff up there, including navigating psychedelics for clinicians and therapists. So those next couple classes start up in September. I think it's the Thursday after Labor Day. So check that out at psychedelicEducationCenter.com. And we should have continuing ed credits available by then. So expect some announcements soon on that. And I think that's it. So thank you all for tuning in to Psychedelics today. This is Joe Moore signing off, and see you next time.